Open Your Eyes is brought to you by the Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.
Good morning. Welcome to Open Your Eyes.
Start your morning right.
I'm Marlene Cuellar.
And I'm Asana Keretano. Good morning.
And thank you for joining us this morning.
Back from an Emancipation Day weekend.
That's our first Emancipation Day
Indeed
weekend.
it was, indeed
yes.
it was. Unfortunately for us in Belize City, it was a rainy off, rain and shine on and off again kind of weekend, but we're not complaining.
It's been that way for the most part of the weekend, and it's strange getting a 3-day weekend in the middle of summer. But I know that there were quite a few celebrations to be able to commemorate our first ever Emancipation Day on August 1st.
I think there is continued education to be had in terms of raising public awareness on the idea of Emancipation Day, it being our first to be celebrated on Monday. I think there is still a long way we need to go. But this is very, very early on, so to speak, right? I guess as we go along, we will understand the significance of Emancipation Day and why it is celebrated on the 1st of August.
Yeah. And I guess perspective is everything, because I think for some people, we're late. We're late to the game in commemorating. And people who have spent time in the Caribbean, or studied in the Caribbean, quite a number of Belizeans have, they understand how big a deal it is as well. But I agree. I know there were efforts made to be able to get the education going so people understand why this day is important and why we're now beginning to commemorate it along with the rest of our Caribbean brothers and sisters. But, anyway you take it, people will appreciate a 3-day weekend.
In the middle of summer, as you said. Right?
And the key part, though, is that we got a short week ahead and there's a lot to get into. So we're going to start off with our motivation for this morning. And our eye-opener is taken from dailyom.com, and it goes like this. No matter how brave, strong, or level-headed we are, sometimes we all get scared. Life can take us on a roller coaster ride full of highs and lows and twists and turns. Even for those of us who enjoy unexpected thrills, it's frightening to suddenly find ourselves heading for a deep plunge. Yet, it happens to all of us. At these moments, it is important to remember that you are not alone in your experiences. Sometimes just acknowledging our fears is enough to make us feel better. And while it sometimes takes a lot more to ease our mind, we can console ourselves with the knowledge that life can be scary at times. Giving ourselves permission to be scared lets us move through our fears so we can let it go. It also makes it all right to share our fears with others. Sharing our apprehensions with other people can make our fears less overwhelming because we're not letting them grow inside of us as pent-up emotions. Sharing our fears also can lighten our burden because we're not carrying our worries all by ourselves. Remember that you.
This is a pretty interesting or tricky one, if I may. I think of fear and I think of bravery as both attributes that exist within human beings, right? Being able to face one's fear and acknowledge that you're scared of what you don't know or you're scared of what you're seeing coming ahead is, in a certain extent, a measure of bravery. Being able to accept and acknowledge that. It's bravery. But at the same time, in a society where, from childhood we are being groomed to face our fears, whether they be outward signs of being scared of something or inner mental thoughts that kind of get you worried and kind of,
Yeah.
off puts you or what have you. Being able to say, well, you know what, as a child I was being taught, you know what, be brave, face your fears. Worse if you're a boy, you got to
Yeah.
be able to stand up and, take your position. But when you see someone who is able to accept and acknowledge, hey, you know what, I'm genuinely scared. Like what becomes of my future? What becomes of my children? What becomes of my professional life? What becomes of my family or my mother who's suffering with cancer? Whatever it is,
Yeah.
in that moment, one has to accept, you know what, this is bigger than me. Like,
Yeah.
this is like beyond me at this point. And I think it's at that time that you need to have the kind of confidence and communication in someone else who would be able to, if not shepherd you through the fear, at least be able to understand where you are at that particular point. Because not everybody is going to hold your hand and say, okay, you're scared, let me walk you through.
Yeah.
Not everyone is going to do that.
Yeah.
Sometimes people leave you to face your fear by yourself. And it's transformative because at the end of that, once you're able to successfully meet it and overcome it, you are a different person. You don't look back and say, hey, you know what? I'm scared of going forward. No, you already crossed that hurdle or that threshold. And so it's one of those delicate things that play in my
Yeah.
mind.
No, definitely. You know what I think stands out to me is the fact that it acknowledges how important it is that you can unload that fear on someone else. And I say unload cautiously because you don't want to just dump on people.
Yeah.
Sometimes, the relationship can be one where you have that type of trust where you can speak of your fears. And that's the key thing. It's acknowledging that we all go through different types of fears. It could be a physical fear, a fear of your safety. There may be an imminent threat. It could be some loved one who's sick. Right now, I know a lot of people are concerned about COVID. It's a fear of getting it. It's a fear of getting very sick with it. If they're already sick, it's a fear of also being able to see, whether or not you'll survive it.
Yeah.
And so there are people who have financial fears right now. They're definitely not alone in that particular struggle. But what happens is we carry these burdens and we feel like we're the only one. And we don't want to talk about it because, nobody wants to be the odd man out. But very often when you find yourself with someone who you can trust and you're able to speak about it or say that it's something that worries you or concerns you, because we don't use the word fear so easily, that you're preoccupied with it for some reason, you find that sense of solidarity that you aren't the only one going through it, and it helps a lot to just be able to acknowledge that that's what you're experiencing.
Yeah. Man, it's an interesting eye-opener, I keep saying, because on a personal note, I mean, growing up as a child, there were quite a number of things or issues that used to scare me. As I would say, scare the bejesus out of me, right? But then I learned, that growing up means being able to face those fears. And like I said, it's transformative because at the end of the day, once you've gone through that experience, you would know how to help someone else overcome that fear. Like I look at my son, and as a child, perhaps some of the very same things that used to scare me are some of the things that perhaps are scaring him.
Yeah.
And I'm in a better position now to sort of be the shepherd in that situation where I can say, hey, don't worry about that, or I could kind of guide him and then he understands, this is just one hurdle.
Yeah, and you only learn that by being able to go through it on your own. There you have it. That's today's eye-opener. We hope it's really helpful for you, especially as you get your week started. But with that, though, we're going to get moving into our weather update for today, and we have Angelia Guy on the line. Good morning.
Morning.
How are you today?
Good, you?
Not too bad. Looks like the start of a beautiful day. Tell us, what can we expect with our weather?
Okay, we expect a few showers around the country and isolated thunderstorms.
Okay. And our 24-hour forecast?
Skies will be sunny with some cloudy spells today and then partly cloudy tonight. We'll have a few showers and isolated thunderstorms expected around the country today, starting to decrease later this afternoon, and then activity will be mostly over the south tonight.
Okay. And what about our winds?
Winds will be generally from the east at 10 to 20 knots.
All right. And those temperatures?
High temperatures today will reach around 88 degrees Fahrenheit along the coast, 92 inland, and 78 in the hills.
All right. And for tonight?
Tonight, the low temperatures will range from 81 degrees Fahrenheit along the coast, 73 inland, and 68 in the hills.
Okay. I noticed there's also a flood advisory. Do you want to tell us more about that?
Yes, there's the possibility for flooding over the south, especially over the southern Toledo district. They have been getting rain for the past few nights.
And looking forward, we are seeing periodic rains for the past few days. What can we expect in the week ahead?
Okay, we expect some drying out later today, and so I expect generally fair weather tomorrow, and then another increase closer to the weekend in moisture and activity.
All right. And let's, of course, remind everyone that we are in the hurricane season. Is there anything we need to be monitoring at this time?
At this time, no.
All right. Well, that's good news then. Thank you so much for that update, Angelia.
You're welcome.
You have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.
So we're set for today at least.
I was going to say, don't let the sun outside fool you right now, because they are saying continued moisture.
So it's more of the same from the weekend.
Yeah, pretty much. We are in the rainy season after all,
Yeah.
and I'll take a periodic shower here or there rather than massive flooding or facing a storm. So
Fair
I'm good
enough.
with that. Yeah. All right, we're going to get moving into our Eye on the News. We're going to take a look at the big stories coming out from the weekend and stories we'll be covering in the week ahead.
A week ago, no, a week and a day, we sat on this couch discussing police reform and the dire need for the department to, look within and see how best it can deal with the men and women who are tasked with protecting and serving in terms of how they go about their jobs. So while we delved into a rather in-depth conversation on that matter last week, I look at the flip side of the coin this week in terms of what we see have been happening. The context for this particular conversation, Marlene, has to do with incidents that are transpiring in the area of Penn Road and Crawl Road. I know that last weekend there was a murder and a shooting. This weekend, a similar occurrence played out, just that the shooting involves an officer responding to someone who had moments ago carried out a murder, also in the vicinity of Penn Road and Crawl Road, that area by Rivera Street. The flip side of the coin for me is that while we are holding the department to task for living up to its responsibility or its responsibilities, as a society we also have to hold ourselves and our children at task to live up to their responsibilities, and as parents we also should be able to guide them. Now, the reason for me saying this is because this was purportedly carried out by a minor who is 16 years old, right? As the police report has it, Matthew Gutierrez was gunned down as he was walking in the vicinity of Crawl Road on Sunday morning. This was purportedly carried out by 16-year-old Shamar Nicholas. In the process of fleeing the scene, Shamar reportedly encounters police officers on Rivera Street who were essentially responding to the gunshots that were fired earlier. There was an exchange of gunfire. Shamar continued riding his bicycle a certain distance, fell off the bicycle, and died on the scene. Not too far away was a firearm that was presumably used in the commission of the crime. Good. So there has to be, in my mind, a juxtaposition to be made here, and this is the way I'm thinking about it, because 2 weeks ago we were looking at another officer-involved shooting where a minor was shot and killed.
Yeah.
We're looking at the Laddie Gillett case, where it plays out in my mind seeing 14-year-old Laddie laying dead on a hospital bed or on a bed, and I'm seeing 16-year-old Shamar Nicholas lying dead on the street not far from his bicycle and his firearm. Two completely different circumstances. Nonetheless, they involve officers responding to, a call or responding in the line of duty, and this is the fatal outcome. While Laddie's one, we can say, you know what, it was completely, unfortunate that this is what happened to a minor who was, at the wrong place at the wrong time. However you want to look at that one, in this particular instance, we have long been saying, and this was echoed by the Commissioner of Police, who spoke with me casually on Sunday following this incident, that a majority of the crimes that are being committed in terms of the homicides that we're seeing, the shootings and what have you, are in fact being carried out by teen minors. Right? We're looking at young boys, I would say, between the ages of 13 and 17 years old, and in some cases even younger, right? And so it goes back to what I was saying. The onus is on us as parents and as a society to be able to be held accountable for that. While we rag on the department for its shortcomings and what have you, we should also be held to some regard, some responsibility for the whereabouts of our children and the things that we're teaching them to avoid these kinds of occurrences.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think I hear your point, and we have long heard of the recruitment of children into gangs, especially in Belize City. And it has been an issue that several agencies have been working, trying to address, and it's one that has to continue. And they are children. I know it's hard sometimes to think of a 16-year-old or a 17-year-old as a child, but that's what they are.
Yeah.
And their level of development is not one of an adult. Now, that's a social issue that really has to be addressed. But coming back to the police-involved shooting, you're right. This is a new instance now, very different circumstances from what we saw with Laddie Gillett. The reports coming from police at this time is that they were under fire, that the minor shot at them, and they responded shooting as well. So what has to happen, or what I would imagine is to take place, is that there has to be a thorough investigation. This is kind of, and we're seeing it in international news. Any officer-related shooting has to be taken extremely seriously, and all circumstances have to be explored, because there's always the question as to whether or not it was justifiable force that was used. Based on the report that we're getting so far, they were saying they were responding to gunfire that they were being placed under. So that's what we know so far. But it is a very unfortunate situation, and it will just kind of refocus the microscope once again on how the police responds to it.
Again, the backdrop, as I mentioned earlier, is the fact that something is afoot in the Crawl Road area. As I mentioned earlier, it's within the scope of 1 week that we have, been out there trying to get an understanding of what is taking place. I know that there was a fatal shooting at the corners of Crawl Road and Hines Street last weekend, where the individual who went and opened fire on several individuals who were inside a property, he himself was shot and killed by someone who fired back from that yard. And so it was being investigated in the onset as a murder shooting. And this is a similar one where in this particular instance, it's the police officers that were responding to the incident. So that is the first thing that I wanted to touch on this morning. The other part of our conversation is the ongoing COVID situation. I know when we left on Friday, there was a brief press conference, if I may, that was held between the media and the Minister of Health and Wellness, Michelle Shabat, where information was being shared with us on new measures that have since come into force as of Sunday. And this has to do with the curfew now being taken down to 9 p.m. So we're now in a state where we're supposed to be indoors by 9 p.m. and it goes through until 4 a.m. That's the first thing. There has also been a lockdown of Santa Elena in the Toledo district. I know our colleague from down south, Will Mejia, had been complaining quite loudly at that there was unchecked activity happening that allows people to be able to move across from Santa Elena to other areas that are infected, and we've seen a bloom in the number of cases down there. The Ministry of Health and Wellness has since quarantined the entire community for a period of 2 weeks, and provisions and cash assistance will be given to them during this particular period. This is an effort to see how best they can curtail the spread of COVID in that area. Beyond that, however, there has also been a cluster identified at James bus line. Now, if you're someone who travels in public transportation, you would understand that James bus line is the foremost, if not the only, means of transportation from Punta Gorda by public transport, right? And so the identification of a cluster among its employees, its staff, has forced a shutdown until they're able to get to the bottom of it. How many people are infected and what the scope or the extent of it is. I'm certain it's an inconvenience to people who were planning on getting out or getting into Punta Gorda via this particular means, but it's part of what happens. It's become necessary that, you know, they do a thorough investigation into what is taking place there. I think, Marlene, for a while we weren't hearing of Toledo District as sort of, I wouldn't say the epicenter, but the kind of numbers we've seen. For a while, Toledo was fairly dormant in terms of COVID stats and what have you, but things are changing.
Well, yeah, but you know, I think the news over the weekend is extremely concerning because, as you pointed out, and anybody who spent time in the South knows that James bus line is kind of the preferred transportation for people moving out of Punta Gorda, out of all the villages along the roadway coming into Belmopan and into Belize City. So having 6 persons from staff test positive, and we don't have the full confirmation. There are some reports that say they're conductors. If it's conductors, it's even more concerning. But clearly there is a additional concern, as there has been a notice put out from the Ministry of Health that, in fact, if you have traveled on a James bus after July 28th and you are feeling any symptoms that are associated with COVID, and we know now it's changed. You're looking at runny nose, sniffling, fever, headache, anything that may signify that you are sick, they're asking you to contact the Ministry of Health. So think of all the people who've traveled on buses since July 28th who may or may not have come in contact with these persons who were positive, and they weren't all symptomatic, so it's not like they were knowingly going out and infecting people. They were carrying the virus without any actual symptoms. But the issue is that we are seeing, this is a potentially critical point to see how many cases are going to come out of this particular cluster. Because you're talking about public transportation. You're not talking about like one village where you have to go in and come back out. This is a transient system that moves throughout the south, into the west, into the central area of the country.
So, again, in the COVID context, we're also looking at Spanish Lookout, where the commissioner himself had mentioned on Thursday that he had a visit to that Mennonite community earlier in the week, and to his surprise, no one was really following the regulations and the protocols that have been set in place for the entire country. And this kind of harkens back to the situation that happened in Blue Creek several months ago. It begs not only the question, but perhaps the reiteration of the fact that the Constitution of Belize serves for everyone that's living in this country, bar none. So it does not matter your religious association, your cultural or ethnic situation, your financials, whatever it is, you're Belizean, you're living in Belize, the law applies across the board, right? And so in the instance, they're saying, well, look, why not use Spanish Lookout as sort of an example of how to effectively deal with the COVID situation? And in the very same press brief that was held with Minister Chabat on Friday, he was saying, look, this is quite the opposite of what we want to be doing. You can't at this point abandon the use of face masks and completely disregard social distancing and all these other measures that have become standard in us fighting COVID-19. And so I reiterate, we're all living in this particular country, what has been set out either in the Quarantine Act, in the Constitution of Belize, whatever regulations apply across the board, and it's a matter of adherence.
Well, yeah, I remember I saw that interview with the commissioner, and clearly he seems very upset with the fact that there is no enforcement taking place. The challenge will always be getting rural communities under the same level of monitoring as the urban communities. Urban communities naturally have more police officers around. So your cities and your towns, you'll have more police moving around. When you dive into some of the villages, like the ones that were quarantined before, Barranco, Conejo, now Santa Elena, and even and even Spanish Lookout to a certain extent, they're further off. It takes a bit more effort to get to them to monitor. But you know, let's keep it close to home as well.
Yeah.
Belize City is also showing a high number of cases, and I know that the big concern right now is especially the south side of Belize City, because they're seeing, we report for Belize City double digits every day in new COVID cases, and we have to look at some of the things that came out that's been coming out about the Delta variant, which most medical professionals kind of have a consensus to say that we have in the country. Given what we're seeing across the world, we know that it is highly, highly transmissible. You know, I think one medical expert said it's almost like chicken pox. That's how easy it is to catch. The Minister of Health and Wellness said before, in the last waves, you'd have one person identified in the family in a household, and maybe one other person would have been infected and the rest would be safe. Now, when they identify one case, the entire household is infected. So it shows you how much faster and how much easier it's spreading. When we look at the households that we see in Belize City, a lot of families live together, and they live together in small spaces. So the potential for these numbers to escalate is definitely one that I'm sure is of great concern as we keep on watching these cases pop up. And it is, you know, I think even if you add in contact tracing and if you talk about identifying symptoms, it still goes back to one thing. We have to maintain protocols, and we have to keep on pushing people to get vaccinated, because as Delta continues to spread, the most important thing is that we can keep people out of the hospital and not facing the fatal consequences that this disease can carry.
So the other important thing that came out of Friday's press brief with the minister is the fact that a task force has also been established, where you'll see now persons going into business establishments. Doesn't matter if it's a restaurant, if it's a store, it's an office space, where they will be checking to see that rules are being followed in respect of the COVID protocols that are existent, right? So these people will go in and ensure that, you know, things are in place. You either have your hand sanitizer, you have your markers for your social distancing, you have signage that says persons must wear a face mask entering that particular building or what have you. So this is just added measures that have been put in force to see how best we can stem what appears to be another wave of COVID infections, right? Yeah. So that's it for that. The final thing that I wanted to touch on quickly.
I just wanted to add to that, though, because we were talking about it a bit before we started the show. One of the things I must say does look promising is that people are getting vaccinated. Yeah. And I know that we keep on saying it over and over, and we're not where we need to be. But when I looked at the numbers coming out last week from the vaccination update, the last two I saw, one was over 2,000 people had gotten vaccinated in one day, And I believe the last update that was shared on Friday, it was over 5,000 people that have been vaccinated since the last report. So we are seeing people, and we're seeing the lines of people go out to get vaccinated. The key part, though, is that if you've gotten that first dose, which over 100,000 people are just at that first dose, you are still just as susceptible to COVID-19. So you have to wait, you know, at least two to 3 more months before you can consider yourself fully vaccinated. So don't be fooled by that first dose and think that you can loosen up on your restrictions as well. The key part is just getting this information out to people as much as possible. And while we know with the Delta variant, it'll keep on spreading, Isani, what is known and what is being shown in data across the world is that vaccination minimizes severe COVID and fatalities due to COVID. So, and that's, you know, what we all want. We want to be able to know that we can survive this disease if you happen to come in contact with it.
Let me continue there then. I was going to go into another quick one, but I'm glad that
thought.
So another thing is that employees of call centers have also been bumped up to essential services for the purpose of this whole fight against COVID-19. So that I think in talking to people that I know who work in the BPO sector, quite a number of people are sort of reluctant to get vaccinated. This is before them being classified now as part of the essential services regime, if I may. And so now they too are being required to get vaccinated or present negative COVID tests.
Starting this week.
Starting this week. Precisely. I think because government acknowledges that aside from itself, the BPO sector has been the next largest, you know, group where you have people who are employed. And so in order to uphold the livelihoods of all of these individuals, then you have to be subjected to these particular measures. So that's the other thing there. And it would be interesting to get some feedback from the managers and the owners of some of these call centers to see how they're dealing with that. Some would argue and say, well, why do I got to get vaccinated if I'm working from home? Because I've heard that too. Quite a number of them are working out of their homes, right? But you also do have call centers who have their employees in office who, yes, there's also another argument, well, I'm not dealing with someone directly, I'm on the phone. But if you're sharing close quarters with a colleague who's doing the same thing, then you're equally as exposed, right? So that call center one is going to be an interesting one. The final one, Marlene, is there also seems to be an issue that's taking place within the San Ignacio Santa Elena Town Council. Over the weekend, an invitation was sent out for the media to attend a brief or a conference that would have been held this morning that has since been pushed back to tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. But the understanding is that as many as 15 persons who are employed by Town Hall have been given their walking papers. And it would seem as if though the mayor is taking a stand that constitutionally he has to be the one to sign off on that and to take the lead in respect of that. Now, whether or not he is being outvoted by the other members of the town council, considering the fact that if you look at the composition of the San Ignacio Santa Elena Town Council, it's only Mayor Trapp and one other person who represent the United Democratic Party.
2 out of 7.
Yeah, the remainder are all members of the People's United Party who won their seat on March 3rd, right? So it'll be interesting to see the dynamics on how that plays out. So I just wanted to...
We've seen some of it already. They called a press conference and then they canceled it.
Yeah, and moved it back to tomorrow for reasons that they're saying is beyond their control. The party leader is supposed to be present at the press conference tomorrow. So I guess that's part of the reason why they kind of postponed it for him. Right, so that is for tomorrow, but I just wanted to put that there since we're discussing as well things that we will be covering in the days ahead. So certainly, you got another one.
And there's one more, of course. It was a big weekend for Belize in Tokyo, Japan.
Yes,
the Olympics 2020, what we saw, or 3 athletes who were representing us in Tokyo, they participated in their individual events. We saw Sean Gill, who ran the 100-meter on Friday night. He placed 5th. Amado Cruz, who is the first Olympic canoeer,
Canoeist.
in the Olympics for us, participated on Sunday. He placed fifth, and he also participated in a round for the quarterfinals where he placed sixth. And then Samantha Dirks yesterday did her 400 meter, and she finished in seventh. So none of our Belizean Olympians are going to be moving forward from this phase. But I think it is also a moment for us to be able to say thank you to them for going out there. This is not an easy task to be a country that is not as
Advanced.
Yeah, in training athletes at this level. And our athletes went out there and they worked hard. We spoke with Amado and we spoke with Sean, and they talked about the amount of work that they were putting in to do their very best. And so we want to say thank you to all of them for their participation over the weekend in the Olympics 2020. And we'll have a recap in the news, of course.
Certainly. And just to top that off, the Minister of Sports has also extended his congratulations to the athletes who participated in the Olympics this year. Like you said, we're not advancing to another phase of competition, but nonetheless, we're proud of you guys. Job well done.
Yeah, the minister kind of stirred the pot there with his post, didn't he?
I didn't go.
Yeah, no, I saw it. And,
yeah.
You know, I've had a few people ask me questions about it. He mentioned something about Belizeans who are born at home.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, you know, I think today is just a day to say thank you to the athletes, because it's a lot of pressure going out under all the circumstances of today, and we are still proud of them for representing Belize nonetheless. But that's it for us with the Eye on the News. All right, and now it's time for us to get moving into our show for today. And we're starting off our conversation this morning with a tourism update. So we have tour guides from Cayo who are going to be joining us. We know that since the airports have been open and the cruises have been returning, we're going to hear from them just how things are going. A lot of people are relying on those day tours to be able to get back their livelihood that just went dormant for over a year. And then the second part of our show, we're going to be joined by the Statistical Institute of Belize. They have released the latest numbers last week on the Consumer Price Index and a number of other stats, and so we're going to get the details from them as to what the numbers are saying. And then we're closing off with
highlights from World Breastfeeding Week. It begins the 1st of August and it runs through until the 7th. So that's what we're going to be doing this morning.
All right, so we are going to go ahead and take a break. But before we do, we have a birthday shout out.
We are saying happy birthday this morning to Shaylee Baptist.
Shaylee, we hope you have a great day today and do enjoy from all of us here at Channel 5 and Open Your Eyes. We're going to take that break now, and when we come back, we're going to get into a first conversation for this morning.
That with Smart, you get truly unlimited everything. Only with Smart, you get unlimited data anytime. While with the other guy, it's only double data on weekends. With unlimited data every day with Smart, there's no need to wait. So, it's a fact that our unlimited plans beat the competition. Stop being measured and told when to use your data and get unlimited talk, text, and data. Experience the true unlimited plans with Smart. That's a fact. Make the switch and live smart.
Good morning, sweetie. It's time for school.
Are you a teacher or public sector employee who is thinking of owning your new home? Get the keys to your new home with Belize Bank's all-inclusive mortgage, the best financing option in Belize for your new home purchase or construction. Inclusive of all mortgage-related fees, no down payment, affordable terms, amazingly low interest rates. Visit our nearest branch to speak to one of our financial advisors to discuss how you can be one step closer to owning your new home. Some conditions apply.
Why, Tony?
Boy, Keith, where you going, man?
I actually come see you because I need to buy a stack of them plastic plates and cups for my grocery shop because I run low.
Boy, I stopped importing that thing since April 15th, you know. And I just routed the last batch, must be about like 3 weeks back, you know.
Man, do I usually have anything? Where you going?
Check this, right? Under the new law, we ban all single-use plastics, so that the cups, plates, forks, spoons, and knives, all of that. Since April 15th, can't import none of them. Starting January 15, 2021, you can't manufacture them. April 15, 2021, you can't sell them. And after July 14, 2021, if you get catch with any other thing, you will get fined.
Me never know this. I guess I have to make some changes then. I have to make the customers know that anything not available. Anyways, bro. Thanks, man.
No problem, man. Take care.
Whether you're at home, on the road, at work, or at school, if you see news happening or suspect that something might be up, call or text the Channel 5 News Belize tip line at 672-5555. You don't have to give us your name, just give us the tip. That's 672-5555. Call or text us so we can check it out.
And we'll be back in a few, so stay tuned. Thanks, Jen. Hey there, we know you have to head out to work shortly, but don't forget that you can stay tuned by watching us on our Facebook live stream. Find us at Open Your Eyes BC, and you can continue watching there. You can also download Facebook Watch on your streaming device, and you can watch at your own convenience.
And for all the behind-the-scenes fun, follow us on Instagram at OYE Belize. So,
find us
and follow us
today.
When someone you love becomes a memory, the memory becomes a treasure. Channel 5 introduces the Daily Obituaries. The Daily Obituaries will broadcast all death and funeral announcements and memorials to honor your loved one's life and memories. The Daily Obituaries airs on Channel 5 prior to the evening newscast, with subsequent repeats at 10 p.m. and 12 noon the following day. It will also be placed online on our social media platforms, all for a standard package fee. Celebrate their lives and memories with Channel 5's Daily Obituaries. Honor in life and reverence in death.
Once someone is vaccinated with the COVID vaccine, within 1 to 2 weeks, you begin to develop some immunity against COVID disease. However, it's only after about 4 weeks after the first dose that you begin to have up to 70% protection against serious disease. So this is why it's important to get your second dose when it is due, because that gives you up to 90% or more protection against severe COVID.
And welcome back. As Marlene said just before we went to our first commercial break, our topic to start off our show this morning is an update on tourism and how our guides and operators have been faring off since the resumption of cruise tourism earlier, a few weeks back. That being said, we have with us from the Kaya Tour Guides Association, Andy Bahadur. Good morning, Andy.
Good morning, Miss Marlene. Good morning, Isani. Nice to be here this morning.
Nice to have you here with us too. We also have with us Nikolai Alvarado, and he's from Blast. Good morning, Nick.
Hi, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Belize. Good morning, Marlene. Good morning, Chisane.
All right, so let's begin with our friends out there in the Cayo district. I know that you guys are primarily dealing with overnight tourism, persons who come into the country who choose to adventure, if I may, into that side. What has it been like in terms of numbers and in terms of you guys being able to restore your livelihoods as operators?
All right, good morning again. Thank you for having us. Again, we're the Cayo Tour Guide Association. It's a pleasure to be here. And I can speak from what I have observed. I've been on the road doing trips, transfers, tours. And so we have seen that a definite improvement in the uptake, the numbers increasing now that the borders are open. So we've seen a lot of our guys from our association who are now working. They're not doing the same as pre-COVID, but they're definitely back out. They're getting out. You see them on the road. You see them on the sites. So that's something very positive that we noticed from this. So it has improved. It is getting there slowly. But I think most of our guides are getting back out there slowly but surely.
Yeah.
What has it been like for you, Andy, in terms of your day-to-day dealing with these visitors who are coming in across the border? I know you probably have certain measures that you have to take in terms of COVID awareness and what have you, but in terms of them trickling in and resuming your business, what has that been like for you from a personal standpoint?
Well, for me personally, it's been good to get back out there. Since the last time we spoke here when the cruise ships are coming in. So we've been seeing that number of arrivals from the border, at least from what I've seen, it has continued. And for the most part, most of the guests are complying to the regulations. They're complying. They're more prepared now since it's been a while, as opposed to when it just opened. But when we get there at the border, there's very strict protocols. Only Gold Standard operators are allowed to pick up guests coming in. They need to show reservations at Gold Standard hotels for 3 nights minimum. And then we need to properly sanitize them, the luggage, we take the temperatures, logs. They're informed of the regulations in country. Regarding the mask, regarding the curfew, all of those things, I update them. And most of the guests are, willing, they're willingly able to comply to all of the regulations, requirements here. So it's a very smooth process now as compared to when it just opened. So we've seen that, cooperation from guests that are coming in from this side.
Nikolai, tell us about about Blast and some of the things that your members are saying. One of the things we know is still ongoing is getting smaller operators up to standard with the Gold Standard itself.
Yes, slowly but surely, everyone is getting their Gold Standard in place. Like the cruise tourism, I could speak on the cruise tourism a little. When it first started in July the 7th, I was out there just to observe. We had about 2 guests, I think, booked that day. Not much local operators were out there. The buses were going from the cruise line, of course, and they have a bubble tour of unvaccinated people going with guides. I don't know why. But the second week, we saw an increase, third week an increase, and now going out there last week, I saw a lot more local operators and the taxi actually selling tours.
Yeah.
Now, but what concerns us now is this new SI that just came out last week, I believe, right? About tour guides have to present a vaccination card when going into a tour site, which we believe that it's not only the tour guides that have a threat to the tour site, but anyone that goes to a tour site, that should be across the board. And as I mentioned at first, you have the guests coming off the ship in a bubble tour that are not vaccinated, going on a bus on their own, but that same guide taking them on that bus, socialize with all the other guys before they go on that bus, socialize with them when they come back off that bus. I don't see the point in a so-called bubble tour, and then the guest goes to the site, they don't have to present a vaccination card. So why force that on the tour guides to present a vaccination card to go into a site if you have guests coming off the cruise line who are not vaccinated going into the site? So what's the point of that? Doesn't make sense to us. And
So
that's a big...
have you gotten members complaining about this particular change?
Yes, yes, we are actually, since it came out, it has been a discussion on our chat. We contacted various persons who are in charge in tourism, and they're still working on getting us an answer, and if it's going to be across the board, if they're going to put that to those from the cruise line as well who are not vaccinated, because that's just a myth. You could say that you have guests not vaccinated going on a bubble tour in a bus with a tour guide that is vaccinated. That's ridiculous, because, like I said, the vaccination is good. It's like you're in a car and you have a seatbelt, and you will choose to use the seatbelt because the seatbelt will protect you, right? So that you don't get further injury if you get into an accident. So that's the case with the vaccination. So not because they're not vaccinated coming from a ship, that doesn't mean that they cannot give us the virus, or they cannot come with the virus. Or if we are vaccinated as tour guides, we cannot get the virus from them going into the place that are not vaccinated, you know? So it's just a big concern why they are pushing it down on our tour guides and our local operators, when you have the bigger companies bringing in unvaccinated guests going into their sites as well. So that's a big concern for us as tour guides and operators, especially small operators that goes into these sites. Because the big operators, of course, if one of their guys gets sick with COVID, they have 100 other guys that they could hire. But let's say that one of these guests go into these sites now and infect a local operator, that's their livelihood. They will be out of work for 14 days to 21 days, right? So that's an issue that has to be addressed, I think, real fast, because it doesn't make any sense to us to have just the tour guides present these cards and the unvaccinated one just walking into the ship among us.
What's the sense amongst the tour guides themselves? How many of them are vaccinated or plan to get vaccinated?
Well, I think most of the members of BLAS are open to the vaccination, have been getting vaccinated. Of course, you cannot force it on anyone. So you have some that still have their personal belief about the vaccination. And it's not mandatory for most of the companies. Like, I know for the cruise line, it's mandatory for them to have their guys vaccinated. But for a lot of the local small operators, that's not something enforced upon their guides, right? It's their freedom of choice. Yeah. So it's still open. Some are for it, some are against it, but for the most, people are for it, right? Yeah. But what we try to practice to do every day is just to practice our safety protocols that we've been training for over the past year during COVID, and practicing our gold standard safety with wearing our masks, sanitizing, taking our logs. We try to take that safety precaution on ourselves, try to protect ourselves and our family, right? Even if the higher end don't want to protect or enforce the bigger picture that should be there, we try to do it on our own on a daily basis.
From a dollars and cents perspective, what has this been like for you guys in terms of either seeing some measure of profitability at this point, considering that cruise tourism just resumed? Is it something that you're seeing your ends or what have you?
You're seeing some profit, but not as much as before. Remember, it's only one ship coming in right now. So it's like a test run, you could basically say, up until about September, October. I think it will have an increase. So you could see ends meet tour guide making the money. At least they're working one day for the week, the extra. Because a tour guide works for the pay, but they also try to do that extra work and make sure the guests have a great time while they come back to Belize to work for that extra tip. A lot of them work for a little extra tip at the end of the day. It's a happy coincidence, but that's what they actually try to do, the best that they could do to try to gain that extra at the end of the day, aside from their tour guide pay. So a little extra every Wednesday helps them out a lot. And then we do have unlimited overnight guests coming in. I know I go to pick up at the airport and I see the airport full. Man, when I first, last year, October, when it started up for October, November, it wasn't as full as what I've been seeing for the past 2 months. I barely could stand out there to wait for someone. I have to go at least 100 feet from where you wait for someone, for everyone to move off, then go back to my area. So people are just pouring up through the airport, I could say, more than through the cruise ship terminals.
Yeah. No, I mean, I can see the joy in your face when you say that, because it has been an extremely rough year and a half, especially for the tourism sector itself. But let me ask another question. I hear your concerns about the presentation of the vaccination cards at the tourism sites, But is there a connection being made between the need to reduce the number of cases so that we can stay at a destination that people want to come to? You think that that's a consensus that is understood in the sector?
Yes, but look at this example, right? Before we the vaccination started to be spread and started to be encouraged amongst everyone. Before going to any other country, this is a discussion we've been having a blast on our board.
Okay.
Before going, like if a tourist comes to Belize, like let's say Andy is a tourist coming from California, he comes to Belize. In order to go back to the US, he has to present a negative test to go back into the US. If he wants to go to Mexico, he has to present a negative test. If he wants to go back to Guatemala, he has to present a negative test. Now Belize is the only country that tourists could come. I'm vaccinated. Just come into the country. I don't have to present no test, which is, you don't know if they're coming negative or positive because, like I said, the vaccination still doesn't prevent you from getting COVID. So they could be bringing the COVID although they're vaccinated. So I think how they had it set up first with presenting a negative test before coming into the country, that should have been kept, right? And the cases will have been done because you don't know if it's the vaccinated people who are coming across bringing the virus. I mean, we could take their temperatures, yes, coming into the airport, but they could have met someone the day before and they don't show any symptoms.
Yeah, that's
right?
interesting.
So and then when they're in Belize, then the symptoms start to occur. Like on San Pedro right now, we part of our team from Blast, they have been monitoring 9 different guests that have COVID that came into the country that are staying at hotels, right? And now they're doing contact tracing, and these are vaccinated guests.
Yeah,
that's
right?
interesting. Yeah.
So just imagine Belize is the only country you could come to because the protocols come into our country. You don't have to present a negative test unless you have a vaccine. And a lot of the tourists that comes into Belize, especially from the cruise ship that I've noticed, when they come off and we're like, hey, we got to take your temperatures and stuff, they're okay with it. They've been informed, but a lot of them are ignorant to it and say, oh, we're vaccinated, so we're safe, right? But the vaccination does not make you safe. You still could give me, I still could give you. It's just a preventative measure so you don't go critical when you get the virus, right? So if presenting a negative test to come into country would have been upholded, I think the cases in Belize would have been lower.
Let me ask another question. A lot of these tourists are coming from North America, from the US especially, and they are living in areas where they don't have to wear masks, they don't have to keep social distancing. What's it like enforcing these rules with the groups that you do have? Let's start with you, Andy.
Yeah, that's something that we hear, but from my experience and working with the others, as long as the guests are informed, normally they will be informed before, prior to arrival.
Yeah.
But if you pick them up as a guide, you're doing a transfer, you're taking them to the hotel, you're taking them on the tour. Once you inform them of the regulations, the policies, and you let them know it's mandatory and it's required, and the reason is because you want to reduce the spread, the numbers, and all of that, from their end, it's been very easy to do. I think we have had some reports where, sadly, some of the hotels and other operators have not properly informed their guests. And I think they've even misinformed them where they said, when they get to site, you don't need to wear the mask. Then it falls on the guide to then ensure that, you have to wear your mask when you're with the guide. In the vehicle, definitely. Outside, you have to wear it, except if you're doing something very strenuous or physical or in your water. But I think that miscommunication still exists when it comes from some of the hotels, the front desk operators. And I think when it comes to the whole vaccine, almost all our guides are for the vaccine. Okay. Most of us have received the vaccine already, and we encourage. I think one of the kickback, one of the opposition to it is that it's kind of forcing guides to do it who are not comfortable doing it. And I've stated before, I think the authorities need to do a better education awareness campaign so people can see the benefit and weigh the risks. And then they make that informed decision. Because right now we have it where you have to be vaccinated or you're going to have to show a negative test every 2 weeks. And one of the questions is like, okay, so if I get vaccinated, I don't need to show the test, but I can still pass on the virus. So it seems to be a little unfair to those who are still weighing their options, who are not very comfortable doing it. And so that's something that's similar to what Nikolai has mentioned, our guys earlier. Why am I being forced to show my vaccine card? And if I don't get it, then I have to get tested every 2 weeks. But then if I don't get the vaccine, or I get the vaccine, I can still get and spread COVID. So you should be testing everybody, or asking everybody on site to have a vaccine. So those are some of the irregularities that we see here. And guides have voiced their concern about it, and they feel like they're being unduly pressured and forced to make a decision in something that they're not very comfortable doing.
Let me ask, what's the level of involvement that you have as associations in educating the guides, those who perhaps are still on the fence about getting vaccinated? Because you're right, you know, there is the possibility of still carrying COVID, but it's just far more reduced than if you're unvaccinated. Yeah, it's a far smaller percentage than a person who has had no vaccination. Do you get involved in educating people to help them understand?
From the beginning, well, we have several group chats that we communicate with our guests, because we don't have face-to-face meetings again, but we do meet virtually, and we communicate through WhatsApp and Facebook. And we encourage, we provide the information. We don't tell them, yes, you have to get vaccinated or no. That's a decision that they need to make they need to make that decision. But for those of us who have been vaccinated, we let them know we've been vaccinated, there's nothing wrong with us, nothing happened, and you feel safer. So we do provide, and then whenever the ministry puts out any type of update or information, we share it with our guides. So that's something that we do. But we don't tell them or force them or inform them, you must do this, you must not do that. That's something that we leave for them to decide.
Fair enough. So it's a situation where one's freedom of choice, at least within the context of the association, can be exercised individually. However, with the new position that the government has taken, where, just as Nikolai mentioned earlier, one now has to present a vaccination card or a proof of vaccination before entering certain sites. What has been the response from your membership in Cayo, Andy? I mean, you have St. Antoinette, you have Cajalpet, you have Caracol, you name it.
Yeah.
What has been their reaction to that? Because now they are essentially being compelled to either get vaccinated to have to get vaccinated prior to visiting these particular locations.
Well, our guides, like I said, most of them are for the vaccine. So it's something that, okay, you have the vaccine. I have a picture of my card on my phone, so if I need to present it, I can present it. Because I have different vehicles, I don't want to take the actual physical card. But many of the guides are okay with that. They're going to just have a copy of it. But we do feel that it's somewhat the end result that you're trying to achieve is not going to be there, because you have people that can go to the site on their own who don't have any vaccine, who don't have to produce anything. I mean, a taxi driver can drive guests to the site. They can pick up people in town, take them where they need to go. You have local Belizeans who can show up. You have people from different industries.
Too many loopholes.
So your issue is
themselves. So it just seems like it's not going to have the desired effect.
So if I understand clearly, gentlemen, sorry to interrupt, but I just want to be sure that I'm clear. Your issue is that it's only the tour guides who are being forced to present the vaccination cards, not all persons who go to the sites.
Yeah.
Okay. So
yeah, and again, it's a smaller minority. Most of the guides have been vaccinated.
Yeah.
And they have no issue complying. And especially now, it seems like you have to get vaccinated if you want to work in tourism, which makes sense. I mean, we're exposed to guests coming in.
Yeah.
So we pass that on, if you're out there intermingling, interacting with guests who are just arriving in the country, you don't know their status.
Yeah.
So it makes sense if you weigh the risk for yourself, you decide if it makes sense. So for me, it makes sense to be vaccinated because I don't know what I'm getting into when I go and meet these guests. But for other people, they might not feel the same, especially if they have any type of underlying condition or anything that they might feel, not too comfortable taking the vaccine.
What's it like for the guides? I mean, how do you choose who's going to work with the bubble group, the people who are unvaccinated that come off the ship? I think people should know that there are specific reasons why some people are allowed on the ship unvaccinated, and it may be medical conditions or religious purposes. But there's a very small group of people who've not been vaccinated allowed on cruise ships. How do you choose who goes with them? And is that guide vaccinated?
That's a good question because I won't be able to answer that. You got to check the cruise ship or the big companies that are carrying those
Oh,
tours.
it's those who are booked off the ship.
Yes,
Okay.
because like I said, the same guy, he could be vaccinated, but before he goes on tour, he's still socializing with all the other guides that that are out at the cruise port, right?
Yeah.
After the tour, he's socializing with all the other guides. He goes home to his family, so he's carrying a busload of guests who are unvaccinated, and then comes home to his family, right? So he don't know what those guests brought with them, right? So he could be vaccinated, but he won't show or he won't get the serious symptoms, right? But it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So you have like myself and other tour guides will be going to, let's say, Alton Hadet or Cape Tubing. Now you got a busload of guests coming from the cruise ship who are unvaccinated, who are socializing at Alton Ha, passing through the boot out Alton Ha, don't have to present any vaccination card, but we are there vaccinated, so they present a risk to us, right? So if it's something that they want to enforce, I feel like it's something that does being enforced to get the guides vaccinated, right? It's something forcefully being brought upon the guides, right? And it's presenting a pretty picture on it and saying that, oh, it's protect yourself, protect your guests. But you have guests going to the site that are unvaccinated, so it's not to protect myself or my family, right? It's at the end of the day for the best interest of somebody else.
Nikolai, where have you all taken this concern? Is it just something that's kind of happening in your own individual groups, or you've expressed kind of a written concern?
We have expressed it to the ministry already, and to the Belize Tourism Board. We we receive a response that is just for the tour guide, and the unvaccinated guests don't have to present it. And to us, that is unacceptable, because, like I said, they present a risk to us. So if you're going to be forcing our guides to present a vaccination card going into a site, then the guests who are unvaccinated from the cruise ship have to present a vaccination card. They can't go into our site unvaccinated if we ourselves from a guide cannot go in there but unvaccinated.
It should be across the board.
That's being biased in a way.
Yeah.
Let me ask one more. Can I just shift gears for a second, because I really want to ask a question about the tourists that are coming in. Are you seeing, as we quickly run out of time here, are you seeing tourists who are returning or people who are new to Belize coming in at this time?
We have had returning guests. Like, for example, last week we had a guest coming in who came before, and then he booked 2 cruises back to back. So this week he's coming in again.
Wow.
So they're traveling and returning. we have had returning guests.
I've seen guests coming in. Some of them have stayed, they've been waiting for over a year to come to Belize, and they come here like every 2 years, 3 years. So that demand is there. People want to come. So, to look on the positive, the upside, it's looking very optimistic in terms of getting back to where it was slowly. But we do have, from when I'm getting from the border, we get a lot of Central Americans coming in. So
Central Americans?
From Guatemala. We get people from Guatemala. We get people from Honduras. They come and they stay at hotels, they take a little vacation, and then they go back. So that is there as well. So we are seeing some Central Americans. This is through the border, and Europeans as well. I mean, yesterday I had a couple from Poland that were coming in. So we got people from Germany, from Spain. So they're coming in. They were the ones that were in Guatemala, and as soon as they found out that Belize's border was open, they decided to come this direction.
They started doing the regional travel.
Yeah.
Okay.
And some of them are trying to look for that transit through Belize to Mexico, which is not available at the moment. So they end up staying 3 nights in Belize and then continuing on to Mexico. So we're seeing new arrivals, first-time arrivals to Belize, but that repeat customer for the overnight definitely is still taking this.
It's still a big base. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, this was really just
one more.
Go ahead.
One more thing. Another concern, another issue I like to put out there is too that what the Ministry of Tourism and the Ministry of Transport would do, since it's only supposed to be gold standard carrying guests, right? And this was a problem way before the gold standard existed. Since we cannot drive our vehicles over into the country of or neighboring country to do tours, we gotta hire a guide at the border and a vehicle. I think it should be implemented that the same thing should be done when they're coming into Belize. Like when they reach the Belizean border, they hire a gold standard guide, operator, and a tour guide from Belize to transit them or carry them through the country, I believe, on tour, because we have seen foreign or neighboring countries' vehicles at sites. We have seen boats on our reef from neighboring countries who are operators who are not gold standard doing tours in our waters and at our site who are not gold standard. So that needs to be addressed as well.
Yeah. So there aren't any specifications for that? Because this reminds me a lot of the situation that you had with the Mexican and Guatemalan buses when they were coming in, and that had to be resolved for the same reason.
I mean, I think the last time we had an operator, he went down south to one of our reserve, and he actually videoed the boats and the tourists coming in, and he asked the captain, "Where are you guys from?" He said, "Guatemala." They're an operator from Guatemala. You have a license and permission to be here doing our reef tour, and they're the ones destroying the reef because they're walking on top of the reef. They don't have any guides monitoring their guests, so that's a big problem. And we actually sent those videos to the authority, but nothing was done about it. So they just pushed under the table, I guess.
Well, you know, we appreciate you bringing it up, and this is the opportunity for us to discuss the concerns that you've been having as operators in the country, and definitely look forward to following up to see where it goes from here. Please continue to stay safe, and we are happy to hear that you are busy and working once again, because that's what we were all looking forward to, even though we're not tour guide operators, right?
All right, thank you.
All right, stay safe, guys.
Thanks again.
All right. And with that, we're going to go ahead and take a break, and we'll be back in a few.
Working off-site doesn't mean you have to be off your game. Studies have shown that simply adding a keyboard and mouse to your laptop increases productivity by 26%. Add a monitor and you'll be 35% more productive. At Fulltech Systems, we have what you need to enhance your remote work or e-learning experience. With devices such as headsets, video conferencing monitors, webcams, keyboards, mice, docking stations, all with the brands you trust. Keep connected with collaboration tools like Microsoft 365 Suite and Kaspersky, and perform efficiently no matter where you are. Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service.
As one of the largest cable and internet providers in Belize, CBC strives to provide our customers with the highest standards of quality, value, and service in all aspects of cable TV and internet. Monitoring our systems closely, our technicians combine creative planning and state-of-the-art technology with years of experience and training to develop and provide the most reliable and advanced cable and internet service to exceed your expectations. For CBC and our team of talented engineers, technicians, and customer service representatives, delivering less than the very best is never an option.
Smart continues to expand its internet coverage countrywide to help you live a smarter life.
Our villagers are very happy. They are pleased to know that Smart went the extra mile to put a tower in our village so that our villagers can get live stream on their TVs and they can get their kids doing their online classes. I want to say to Smart, thank you for making it possible for us to get internet in Gardenia Village. We really do appreciate it.
Smart continues to take the internet and mobile services to communities across Belize. Now save even more when you bundle your Smart broadband with Smart mobile services. Smart, bringing people together.
Whether you're at home, on the road, at work, or at school, if you see news happening or suspect that something might be up, Call or text the Channel 5 News Belize tip line at 672-5555. You don't have to give us your name, just give us the tip. That's 672-5555. Call or text us so we can check it out.
And we'll be back in a few, so stay tuned. Thanks, Jen. Hey there, we know you have to head out to work shortly, but don't forget that you can stay tuned by watching us on our Facebook live stream. Find us at Open Your Eyes BC, and you can continue watching there. You can also download Facebook Watch on your streaming device, and you can watch at your own convenience.
And for all the behind the scenes fun, follow us on Instagram at OYE Belize. So,
find us
and follow us
today.
And welcome back. We have been joined virtually by members of the Statistical Institute of Belize. We have with us the statistician 2 for economic statistics, Jacqueline Sabal. Good morning, Jacqueline.
Good morning.
We also have with us Melvin Perez and Tiffany Vasquez. They're also from the statistician, they're also statistician 2, right?
From the Economic Statistics Department.
Good morning, guys.
Morning, everyone.
All right,
Good
so
morning.
we're going to discuss the recently issued information with regards to the Consumer Price Index and the Gross Domestic Product. What are we looking at over the past quarter?
Okay, well, I think I'll go ahead and start with GDP.
Mm-hmm.
So as it relates to the GDP for the first quarter months of January to March of 2021, the total value of goods and services produced within Belize was estimated at $660 million. This was actually a decrease of 8.4% compared to the same period of 2020. I think it's important to mention that this was the fourth consecutive quarter of economic contraction as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah.
Wow.
So can I just ask a question there on that point? Because I saw that you make a note of saying in the COVID-19 pandemic, pre-COVID-19, there were also 4 quarters of contraction, right?
Pre-COVID-19, there were contractions, yes, not 4 quarters. If we include the pre-pandemic contractions as well, it's actually 6 quarters.
6 quarters of contraction.
Yes,
wow.
If we include pre-COVID. And that's mainly due to, and some of it was due to weather conditions as well. We were severely affected by the drought prior to COVID.
Now, the biggest contraction that you've seen is in the agricultural output, right?
The biggest contraction was actually in the services sector.
Tourism, yes.
Yes, which was mainly due to our hotels and restaurants subsector. There was a large decrease there. But overall, services decreased by 12.3%. Agriculture did decrease as well. We did see a deduction in the primary sector by, I believe, 2%. Yes.
Okay, let's move on to the Consumer Price Index then. Do we have that information available?
Yes. So the Consumer Price Index, the inflation rate stood at 3% for the month of June 2021 when compared to the same month of 2020. Now, this means that prices for the baskets of goods and services has increased 3% for the period. Now, this increase was influenced by higher prices in the transport category, food and non-alcoholic beverages category, housing, water, electricity, gas, and other fuel, and personal care, social protection, and miscellaneous goods and services category. First, let's look at the transport category, which had an increase of 11.7%. Now, I must say that this was the main category that has the greatest impact on the national inflation rate for the month of June 2021. Within this category, we saw higher prices were recorded for all motor vehicle fuel, especially for diesel and regular gasoline.
Yeah.
Now, the second category that did influence the national inflation rate was the food and non-alcoholic beverages category. Now, prices within this category were up by 3.8%. The food section itself was what influenced the category to have a notable increase as higher prices were recorded for meats and fresh fruits. Just to name some of the items that we saw a market price increase for the month was orange, lime, pineapple, potatoes, red kidney beans, pigtail, rice, whole chicken, and natural milk.
You just outlined all the everyday food for Belizeans.
Our staple food.
And all of them went up.
Yes, so these items, we saw a significant increase during the month of June of 2021 when compared to the same month of 2020.
Can I jump back to the transport category just very quickly to get some clarification? The transport category, as you said, had the highest inflation, and transport has an implication on all of the categories. But within that transport category, there's fuel, and then there's also things like airfare. What was the primary driver for the increase there? Was it fuel, or is it still looking at cost of travel?
The primary item that did influence the category was the fuel prices. So those was the one. Well, yeah, all the fuel prices were the one that definitely influenced the category to have an increase.
Okay. Now tell us about San Ignacio Santa Elena.
So looking at the inflation rate at the municipality level, San Ignacio and Santa Elena experienced the highest increase in consumer prices for June of 2021, with an inflation rate of 3.2%. Consumer in this municipality saw above average increase in prices for various food items, personal hygiene products, and fees for surgeries and pet food. Now, on the other hand, Punta Gorda town recorded the lowest inflation rate, with prices going down by 1.8%. As consumers in these towns saw lower than average increase in prices for food items and pharmaceutical products.
What would you say accounts for that?
For which one? For the pharmaceutical products?
For the Toledo district on a whole.
Okay, so for the Toledo district, again, as I mentioned, we saw a greater than average increase in prices for food items. And well, those were the only two items that did influence the Toledo district to have the lowest inflation rate, with prices going up by 1.8%. Food items and pharmaceutical products.
All right.
Okay.
Now, looking at the year-to-date inflation rate for the first 6 months in 2021, when compared to the same period of 2020, the inflation rate stood at 2%. Now, just to give an overview of all the categories, various fruit products saw higher prices during the first 6 months of the year. To be more specific, we saw a greater increase in fresh fruits and vegetables. Also, higher prices for all motor vehicle fuels was recorded for the first 6 months of 2021 when compared to the same period of 2020.
Yeah. Before we move on, Melvin, just give us some insight as to why the food costs increased so much. Fresh fruits and vegetables, fresh fruits and meats. Is it in any way associated to last year's flood?
Well, definitely. Looking at the trend line, food prices has been increasing since March of last year. Now what? Yeah. So yeah, March. So and one of the reasons that that I saw that this change was happening was because, again, remember in April, ending of April is where we had the pandemic to take effect here in Belize. So that was one of the main contributors that the food section itself started to increase. And up to now, food prices, I am seeing that food prices is still increasing up to now. Wow. Showing up to our latest figures that we have published last week.
Yeah, look at that. So Red kidney beans up by 53%. And limes up by 75%. I think a lot of people know that one already.
Limes are rather expensive at the market, so you hear that a lot from people who go out on Saturday morning, for instance, at the Queen Square Market. Tiffany, let's weigh in from your point of view here. What do you have to share with us?
All right, well, imports, if we look at the first half of this year, imports went up by 19.6% when we compare that to imports for that same period last year, right? And obviously, that's because we're returning to pre-pandemic levels in terms of our imports. So we saw almost all commodity categories going up over the first 6 months. Machinery, manufactured goods went up by 36%. That's a $40.7 million increase. Beverages and tobacco, that category doubled. Imports of chemical products went up by 1/4. So you see the trend happening here. Other manufacturers, that went up by 30%. And both mineral fuels and lubricants and the commercial free zones, both of those went up by $11 million. And we also have other categories going up as well. But before I would like to mention exports as well, because I know we don't have a lot of time.
I know, but let me just say very quickly. So what you said just now, while while you're reporting that imports are up, what it actually is kind of a return to normal kind of situation.
Exactly, that is exactly what it is. Because if you look at imports for 2018 and 2019, we're basically mirroring those imports. So it's the same level of imports that we're seeing before 2020.
Well, the numbers we want to see up is definitely exports. Are those pre-pandemic or even better?
Well, exports went up slightly by 4.8%, right? So the good thing is sugar, which is our major export, that went up by 5%. But then we also saw really good exports coming from animal feed. Earnings from animal feed doubled. It went up from $6.1 million to $13.6 million. And that's largely because of the whole COVID-19 pandemic. We have corn-based products. They're in high demand right now on the world market. So prices for corn-based products went up, and we had the crop. So we definitely benefited from that, right? And I really saw a good thing in our press release this month. Pepper sauce. Exports of pepper sauce went up from $2.8 million to $3.8 million. So that was very good.
Oh, that's great. And is that from one provider or multiple sources?
Well, we couldn't divulge information like that. We would just have it grouped as pepper sauce.
Yeah.
It's doing really well because I looked at it for the first 6 months here. We went into 15 export markets compared to the first 6 months of last year. So we had exports of pepper sauce going to places like South Africa.
Wow.
We went to Taiwan, Finland, Iceland, Lebanon. So we're really doing good there. So that was a nice surprise.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
That's a really, I mean, that it feels good to hear that people are enjoying our Belizean peppers all over the world.
Yes, I know. I was very happy when I saw it as well.
Yeah. Okay, so we're looking at some positives here on our export side, but we see that we still have challenges with citrus.
Yes. Well, we had a drop in quantities in exports of orange concentrate this year. Last year, that drop was mainly due because we had a drop in world market prices. But this year, from the start of this year, I've seen some drop in exported quantities as well. And we also had a drop in red kidney beans, but that was mainly though because, and it's the same thing, it's the COVID-19 pandemic. Because last year, very early in last year, right, we had significant exports of red kidney beans being exported very early in the year. Right, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we had this panic buying, and then so what we're seeing here now is just a fall off from that, right? So we just have to put it in context.
Okay. And our marine products are also doing well.
Yes, well, marine products dropped slightly, nothing to talk about. So basically they're stable over the period, over the year, over the first 6 months.
Okay. Yeah. And other highlights that you have noted, tell us about what you're seeing from the numbers. What are they reflecting?
Well, as I said, the one that stood out for me was pepper sauce, and bananas seem to be quite stable. I mean, they had challenges, but when you look at it over this first 6 months, it went up slightly by $0.4 million. So that's very good. So we're not, in terms of our exports, we're not decreasing, so which is good, and we see upticks in different exports, right? So that's a very good thing. So to me, that's my takeaway from the domestic exports for the 6 months.
Okay. All right, and any final observations? I know today it's a short segment, so we can only cover the highlights. But from the recent data provided, anything else that you'd like for our viewers to know about what the statistics are indicating at this point?
I think for GDP, overall, looking at upcoming quarters that we'll be releasing data on, I think we will see some improvements in the numbers, since we will be comparing to a year when we were in lockdown and there was little to no economic activity at all. So I do think we will start seeing some improvement as we release future numbers.
Nice. Yeah, we just finished a conversation with the tour guide, so we know that that's definitely going to be an increase in the next report.
Agreed.
Yeah. All right. And for you, Melvin, any observations that you'd like for viewers to make note of?
Well, just that the only observation that I have been seeing, again, as I mentioned previously, was that food prices has been increasing since the past months. And hopefully, now that when it comes to the COVID effect, hopefully prices might come back to normal, especially when it comes to the fresh fruits and vegetables, because those are the ones that strongly has affected on the past months when it comes to the food and non-alcoholic beverages category.
Yeah. All right. And the next report we should be seeing from you will be, is it another labor force survey? Who can tell us that one?
Well, we do press releases at the end of the last Wednesday in every month, I believe. So our next press release will be the 25th of August. I'm not sure if we'll be doing LFS at that time, but I'm sure we'll be doing GDP, trade, and CPI.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for being with us this morning and kind of updating us on what the latest statistics are saying. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you too. Bye.
And there you have it. That's our statisticians from the Statistical Institute of Belize giving us the rundown on the latest GDP and Consumer Price Index, as well as imports and export numbers. Very important conversation there for us to stay on top of, and so we thank them for sharing that information. We're going to go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, it is World Breastfeeding Week, and we are going to be answering your questions along with the Ministry of Health and Wellness, UNICEF, and we'll even have a breastfeeding mom telling us about her experience. So that's coming up in just a few. Stay tuned.
Are you a teacher or public sector employee who is thinking of owning your new home? Get the keys to your new home with Belize Bank's all-inclusive mortgage, the best financing option in Belize for your new home purchase or construction. Inclusive of all mortgage-related fees, no down payment, affordable terms, amazingly low interest rates. Visit our nearest branch to speak to one of our financial advisors to discuss how you can be one step closer to owning your new home. Some conditions apply.
The Social Security Board, in collaboration with the Labor Department, takes this opportunity to remind insured persons of the requirements for compensation when on sick leave. Any employee who has worked with an employer for at least 2 months is entitled to 16 working days of sick leave with full pay every year. This is how it works. Upon approval of a sickness or injury benefit claim by SSD, 80% of the employee's weekly insurable earnings is paid as a Social Security benefit, and the difference in the employee's salary is paid by the employer. This is to ensure that the employee does not suffer any loss of wages when ill. After 16 days, compensation for sick leave is paid as a Social Security benefit only. Some conditions apply. This message is brought to you by the Social Security Board and the Labor Department. Social Security Board, safeguarding you, your family, your future.
Introducing Edam A cheese, the A+ Dutch cheese to hit the Belizean market. As the name says, it is of A-class quality, the best Dutch cheese in Belize. Edam A cheese is creamier, less salty, and simply more delicious. Don't be left out. Get your A cheese at a supermarket near you. A cheese, exclusively distributed by Unitex Company Limited. Call us at 610-3626 or 610-8910. Follow us on Facebook at Unitex Belize.
Whether you're at home, on the road, at work, or at school, if you see news happening or suspect that something might be up, call or text the Channel 5 News Belize tip line at 672-5555. You don't have to give us your name, just give us the tip. That's 672-5555. Call or text us so we can check it out.
And we'll be back in a few, so stay tuned. Thanks, Jen. Hey there, we know you have to head out to work shortly, but don't forget that you can stay tuned by watching us on our Facebook live stream. Find us at Open Your Eyes BC, and you can continue watching there. You can also download Facebook Watch on your streaming device, and you can watch at your own convenience.
And for all the behind-the-scenes fun, follow us on Instagram at OYE Belize. So,
find us
and follow us
today.
When someone you love becomes a memory, the memory becomes a treasure. Channel 5 introduces the Daily Obituaries. The Daily Obituaries will broadcast all death and funeral announcements and memorials to honor your loved one's life and memories. The Daily Obituaries airs on Channel 5 prior to the evening newscast, with subsequent repeats at 10 p.m. and 12 noon the following day. It will also be placed online on our social media platforms, all for a standard package fee. Celebrate their lives and memories with Channel 5's Daily Obituaries. Honor in life and reverence in death.
Today's COVID update is brought to you by Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service.
And welcome back. For our final segment this morning, we're going to be discussing breastfeeding. We have been joined on set by Robin Daly from the Ministry of Health and Wellness. We also have been joined by Denise Roberto from UNICEF. Good morning, ladies.
Good morning.
We've been joined virtually as well by Leanne Awe. She's a breastfeeding mom. Good morning, Leanne.
Good morning.
Quite an introduction, right, Leanne?
All right, so let's begin by discussing the importance of breastfeeding, both for mother and child. Let's begin with you, Robin.
Okay, as you all know, thank you for having us, first of all. And this week is the start of World Breastfeeding Week. When we look at the benefits for breastfeeding for the child, it's one of the best forms of nutrition. So it provides all the nutrients that a baby needs. And we are promoting also exclusive breastfeeding for 6 months. So during that time, the child is developing and growing, and the breast milk is the best, even though people might argue. It provides all the nutrients, like I mentioned. It helps the baby, prevents the baby from getting sick, provides a very good medium for the baby to have a very well-developed immune system, so less diarrhea, less respiratory infections. As we look at the mother as well, it helps for the mother to lose that baby fat very quickly. It helps to prevent cancer, and not to mention also that bonding that takes place when you're doing exclusive breastfeeding.
Yeah. Now, Denise, let's talk from your perspective. Breastfeeding, and it is World Breastfeeding Week officially this week, and it has been something that has been long advocated for. Funny enough, as soon as we introduced this topic, I think everyone said the long time slogan, breast is best, which is a campaign that was carried out a long time ago. But making inroads in breastfeeding is one that I know we're still working very hard towards, especially exclusive breastfeeding. Where are we today, and are we doing better?
Well, that's a good question. Thank you. Good morning to you and everyone. The theme for this year is promoting breastfeeding as shared responsibility. And that is UNICEF's mandate in just thinking about the rights of the child and mothers, for children particularly, for them to survive and thrive. Presently, with the mixed multiple indicator cluster survey from 2015, exclusive breastfeeding rate in Belize was at 33%. Now, when we looked at the previous mix, I think it was in 2011, that percentage had raised from about 14%. And so there was a minimal gain there, yes, in terms of how Belize was doing in breastfeeding exclusively children under the age of 6 months, 33% at the moment. But that is so small. There's a lot more that we need to do. And this is part of the advocacy work of UNICEF in working with the Ministry of Health and Wellness and our partners to contribute in terms of not only advocacy but technical support, policies, as well as financial resources to do what it takes for Belize to raise its rates in exclusive breastfeeding.
I would assume that perhaps there has been some either research or studies conducted as to why there is, and I'll use this word loosely, there has been perhaps a reluctance on the part of mothers to breastfeed their children. Is there any one particular reason, or is there a number of reasons that have been unearthed, in a manner of speaking, from any kind of studies or research being done?
That is so interesting. Just this year, the reason being is that just this year, we've completed a terms of reference to do that study. We've engaged with the Ministry of Health and Wellness. Robin's looked at it, and so we are planning to do such a study.
Yeah.
There's not been any that I know of before in Belize, so this is going to be very timely for us to really look at the different cultures, the different locations, the different geographic areas to determine the knowledge, attitude, and practices of mothers towards breastfeeding. There are only anecdotes.
Yeah.
And maybe Robin would have some of those
we've all heard them, right, Robin?
We've heard women always complain about some of the challenges that they may experience when breastfeeding. Also, the whole idea of having to go back to work after delivering. It's a very short time after the child is born, so many women might not continue breastfeeding because of not having the support at the workplace. And then also, it does take time and it's consuming. I'm sure that Leanne will have something to contribute being a breastfeeding mother and a working breastfeeding mother, but those are some of the challenges that we see women experiencing. So as Denise mentioned, the advocacy is important because we want to remove that belief that I don't have time or it's too hard and I'll just resort to using formula or the bottle feeding. So we want women to reconsider and to advocate more for us to be doing the exclusive breastfeeding because the benefits far outweigh the potential effects of using formula.
Let's hear from Leanne then. Let's hear your personal experience, why you chose to exclusively breastfeed your new baby.
I exclusively breastfed all 3 of my children from birth to 6 months. And during that time, they didn't even get water. The breast milk has everything my baby needs. And at the beginning of a feeding, the foremilk is very watery. And towards the end of a feeding, the hind milk in the breast milk is where the fat content is located that keeps the baby satisfied. And so many women do not understand how breastfeeding works, the supply and demand. Many women give up very, very easily. And I've always been an advocate for breastfeeding. My son is currently 1 year and 8 months, and he's still on the breast. I breastfeed him before going to work. If I'm home for lunch, he gets a feeding there. And as I enter the door from work, he's very, very excited. And it's a very special time that we bond. I've been through it all, the challenges of having full breast while in a meeting and having leaking breast, the embarrassment of that, having to pump in a bathroom because there's no other place. I'm currently an education officer, and I've had times when we visited schools and I've had to ask the driver, please stop on the highway and park at the side. I really desperately need to pump. I can't take it any longer. And before I got back to work, I expressed milk and I froze them. So I had quite a lot of supply before going back to work. This is aside from breastfeeding my son. And many women don't understand the wonders that the body can do. God created us wonderful beings in his image. And if we just understand that when you have, because personally I've had days when my supply was low. But there are many contributing factors. It can either be that I wasn't hydrated. It can mean that I didn't eat enough because my body burns calories to produce milk. It can mean that I'm stressed. There are a number of things. And so women give up rather easily. And I'm a pretty determined, stubborn person. And so if I have a goal in mind, I'm going to reach that goal. And I have noticed with my children, they're very healthy. My son is, as I mentioned, 1 year and 8 months. He's never had a cold. He is a strong little boy, and it's not that there is shame or blame, or I'm not marginalizing women who have chosen to bottle feed, but for me and for my convictions and what I have done and what I thought was best,
Yeah.
I would not change it. I definitely would not change breastfeeding my children. Not to mention it's cost effective.
Yeah. What's a bottle? What's a can of formula right now? What's
almost like $20.
I was
It
thinking,
depends.
and if you add
Yeah.
the cereal,
Yeah.
sometimes it's about nearly $30 you're spending, and it goes very fast.
Costly.
and you know the breast milk is free, but beyond the cost effectiveness and the bonding, there's just so much research that shows that this is really the best thing that you can give your child. But I think Leanne outlined quite a few of the deterrents. You know, you go back to work, it's difficult. It may not be a conducive environment for you to pump. It can be difficult.
The thing is, though, the thing is, Marlene, if we look at life from the vantage point of only doing things that are convenient, how many things would we not do?
True. That is very true.
This is priority for me, so I always found a way to get it done. And it's honestly liquid gold. I read an article that said if a baby has a cold or if he or she is sick, the breast picks up on the virus when the baby suckles, and it immediately starts making antibodies that changes the breast milk. So when the baby suckles, the milk content that he or she is receiving is actually fighting against that thickness. So it's amazing.
You can be a great coach for other moms out there, because I love that you acknowledge that it doesn't come easily, but it's worth the challenge.
Yes. The idea is for mothers and fathers to really understand the benefits. Breastfeeding is considered even like the first vaccination, if you want to look at it that way, for the child.
Yeah.
It offers optimal nutrition and it helps a child to grow and develop. The first 1,000 days in a child's life is critical, and breastfeeding plays an important role. I'd just like to say that fathers can also play a critical role in breastfeeding by just being supportive, by being there in the first few hours of life. That skin-to-skin contact is so important. The child being on the breast is important. But if a mother, for any particular reason, cannot do that because of coming out of a surgery or whatever, the father or the male or the other caregiver can put that child on the skin and have that bonding experience. So it's for the population to understand the benefits of breastfeeding and of that first contact.
Can I interject and ask a quick question here? You're mentioning that the skin-to-skin bond between father and child, is that limited to only like when the child is a newborn, or because I have a 2-year-old son, and I personally strongly believe that that kind of contact is still very much necessary beyond the phase where he was either breastfeeding or being bottle fed.
Yes.
Is there a particular time span for that, or is that's just part of the bonding process?
That's a part of the bonding process.
Yeah.
You know,
I could see Denise's happy eyes towards you when you said that.
You know that the EC, early childhood development, is coming out here, but the first 2 years of a child life is so critical, and 2 to 3 even. So between 1.5 and 2, the brain, the synapses are forming, the neurons, and so the contact helps to give the child a sense of love, comfort, protection. There's no time span on that.
I want to ask you a question. I don't know if the data has changed, but the mix study a couple years back, when you looked into the exclusive breastfeeding rates, it was interesting when you differentiated exclusive breastfeeding for girls, for baby girls versus baby boys. And baby girls tend to be more exclusively breastfed than baby boys. Is that still the situation?
We are still working with the mix data from 2015, as there's not been a present mix so far. So
but it's interesting, right?
Yes.
Why are mothers more inclined to exclusively breastfeed and bond with their baby girls versus their baby boys?
And that's the analysis that part of the analysis that we would need to do and get into. Again, there are a whole lot of cultural beliefs and myths and differences.
Yeah.
And one that I hear so commonly is that the boy doesn't get enough or is not satisfied with the breast milk.
Yeah.
Oh, he wants more. But as Leanne, I see Leanne shaking
Yeah,
her head
I know,
there.
right?
So
It saddens me when I hear it because it really shows the gender stereotypes from birth that we have for boys.
Exactly.
You're shaking your head, Leanne?
Yes, because I too heard those things, and I have been told many things culturally from
everybody.
There are certain things that we hold on to, and we just believe it, and we don't research for ourselves. My son, I have 2 sons, and yes, they have a hearty appetite. They definitely needed more than what my daughter needed, but that's what causes the demand for my body to produce more milk. The more the breast is stimulated, the more milk will be made. And milk production is it's a very, what's the word? It's a very keen thing that the body does. For instance, whenever a baby would experience a growth spurt, there is increased appetite. The baby needs more fuel because so many things are happening. And so at that time, the baby sucks more milk is needed. However, it also means that there may be a point where the breast is dried and the baby needs more milk. And that's the part where a mother would easily just say, the baby is still hungry, let me just give him or her a bottle, and that's the saddest thing you can do because it affects milk production. You have the baby keep on suckling, and it tells the brain the breast is dry, but there is still this demand for it. And so more milk production is made, and that's how it happens.
Yeah.
The less you feed your baby, the less the breast is stimulated, the less milk that will be produced. And so when you cut back on feedings, you're actually hurting your milk supply.
Yeah. So, and these are some of the great, I mean, she's already covering some of the challenges
we
here.
definitely have to hire Leanne.
I know, right?
We definitely will start going with us countrywide to help this promotion, Leanne, I'm sure, because you are seeking everything that I think we would use to try to encourage mothers in terms of staying and sticking to it. So, it's great.
And that's okay. So that's one of the things that people think it's not enough. So let's talk about that part first.
Okay, so Leanne mentioned a lot just now in terms of how do you continue to engage, you know, the child to continue sucking. But she also mentioned one important factor that we really want to start advocating for, and that's the workplace support. And I think that one is also a very, very big one in terms of trying to get the employers to appreciate the importance of breastfeeding so we could continue the support for it. The area, the time off that might be needed, or the extended lunch hour, whatever it may be, having more employers support women who are breastfeeding or who have that need to breastfeed so they don't they don't stop actually and throwing off the whole the process that the child is going through.
What do you find the workplace to be? Is it still very much taboo for mothers to breastfeed at work, as much as it is in some places taboo for mothers to feed in public? I know that, for instance, in the United States, there was this major campaign where they were encouraging mothers. You had military moms, you have all these kinds of mothers who are being supported to do just that. What has it been like in Belize? Is there a change in culture and mindset where breastfeeding is concerned?
That's a good question, and that's some of the research I think we would want to look at as well. But from what I know, definitely we still have some stigmas or some taboos in terms of where you want to see a woman breastfeeding. So if you're in a restaurant and you see a woman breastfeeding her child, how would you feel about that being next to that person at that table? Or even if you would see a woman maybe in a grocery store somewhere at the corner trying to breastfeed, or maybe even on a bus. And that goes into our next promotion idea that we're going to be doing for this month. We will be doing a video to help to show awareness for some of these stigmas and
Yeah.
to highlight that, so we could have that being aired and have people understand that it's okay for a woman to be breastfeeding her child anytime, anywhere, and that's her right, and that's the right of the child also. And we want to be able to erase some of that belief that people think the woman needs to go and hide or needs to go in a
cover up.
bathroom. There are certain ways that you can breastfeed your child in a respectful way, and it doesn't have to make other people feel very uncomfortable, but it's a right for a woman to be able to breastfeed, and also a right for that child for food. So those are things that we want to be able to showcase as one of our activities for this month.
And the workplace, I think, is one too that definitely needs work. I think you pointed out, Leanne, that you've had to pump in bathrooms, and I can never forget a breastfeeding mom saying to me, would you eat your food in a bathroom stall? And that's what you're asking parents to do when they have to pump in a bathroom stall. So, you know, it's a little bit of perspective that goes a long way. But even so, the data shows that if your employee exclusively breastfeeds their child, then their child will most likely have less sick days growing up. So it's a short-term sacrifice for a long-term gain.
And so that's the awareness that we all need to have. It's a shared responsibility from workplace, schools, families, and part of the advocacy that we're doing in terms of workplace is, yes, creating that space for the mother, a healthy space, a safe and clean space for a mother to pump. Maybe it's just pumping and putting up the milk. Refrigeration, or also breastfeeding, or taking the time necessary, an hour or so, to breastfeed. And there are many different ways as to how a policy could look. And that's part of the work that we are doing in looking at the family-friendly policies for early childhood development and for the optimal nutrition of children. One other advocacy piece is looking at the monitoring of the International Code of Marketing Substitutes for Breastfeeding. And Robin has been doing a lot of work as one of the focal points in the Ministry of Health in that area, where we just look at what is advertised out there. The private sector has a role to play as well in terms of promoting formulas or food or these things for a child less than 6 months. Between the ages of birth to 6 months, a child just needs the breast milk.
Not even water.
Not even water.
Not gripe water either.
Exactly.
Not good.
Yeah, I was going to say aniseed.
Good luck telling the grandmas that, right?
But part of the success of our work is the Baby Friendly Hospital Initiative. Yes, in Belize, where we have the 7 public hospitals being certified as baby friendly and 2 polyclinics being certified as baby friendly. And I think that would be one other initiative for this month in certifying another polyclinic.
And there are also what they call lactation specialists or breastfeeding counselors, right?
I was just going to highlight that part, because that's another way that we try to support women to do breastfeeding and to continue. The idea to breastfeed a child doesn't start when the baby is born. That idea starts while the woman is pregnant. So she decides during that time whether she will breastfeed. So going to the clinics, getting proper antenatal care is really how the support starts. So we have, like Denise mentioned, we do have all of our public hospitals and even our national hospital certified as baby friendly. So there are specialists there that can help women to teach them, to educate them on the benefits and also how they go about breastfeeding. And then we also have lactation counselors. I think You remember Miss Penny? She was one of our advocates and also a lactation counselor that has done a lot of work in Belize. And we have nurses that have specialized also. So there was trainings done. And there are many nurses in these facilities that can help and assist. What we've started to do now, which was a work in progress, we have started to also train our community health workers to start to have them being educated on how they can assist the process, because many times what we notice, sometimes people might have challenges and they won't directly go back to the hospital or the clinic. They're already at home, they're in their community, so sometimes they want to call a neighbor, which could be a community worker, or they could have somebody maybe on phone that they could rely on. They could do a quick conference call on that and how they can get some tips. That's some things that we had to do.
Like proper position and latching and
all of that. So there's all of those techniques that they need to learn, and some of those things we had to put in place, especially with the pandemic ongoing, because there isn't much there isn't a lot of one-on-one counseling that will take place at the clinic level. So we have to rely sometimes on people that can reach out from the community that can help the mother. And also we have these training sessions that we could educate women and other health professionals on how they can support breastfeeding. One more thing, Ms. Denise mentioned about the international code, and that's a responsibility that we're asking also. That has been a very big challenge for us, getting the support from vendors or from suppliers or producers or companies that sell formula or sell breast milk substitutes, because that's a money-making venture for them. So I would like to take this time also to highlight one of our biggest supporters, which is Sancasser from Bottom Dollar. Miss Aisha has been very helpful with us throughout all of our campaigns, and they advocate as well. So we want to have more support from our stores and producers in terms of helping us with this, because everybody has a responsibility to play, and we all must work together if we want to raise our breastfeeding rates and have healthier and more productive children, less sick, things like that.
And just before we close, though, it's important to put into a perspective that we are in a pandemic. And let's talk about the ground rules for breastfeeding moms or lactating moms. Should they get vaccinated? Do you stop breastfeeding? What's the rule there?
We are recommending, well, I shouldn't say we, the World Health Organization has given the go-ahead that breastfeeding moms and pregnant women can receive the vaccine. That's the first thing. So the second thing is that these women, even if a woman gets COVID, she can still breastfeed. So at no point in time should a woman stop breastfeeding unless she's physically unable to do so. And even with that in place, there is still the express, she can express milk still, and they can, a support system can be in place where the baby can still receive breast milk. But at no point we're encouraging a woman to stop breastfeeding.
That's how important it is.
Yes.
Yes. And by exclusive, I think Leanne said it very early on, it's just the breast, nothing else.
Just
no
the breast.
water, no nothing.
Yes.
For 6 months.
For 6 months.
And they can continue onward to 2 years, but we're pushing it just for the exclusive 6 months.
Okay.
In closing, I want to also mention some of our activities that we're doing for this month. And we do have our educational sessions that will be taking place in the various health facilities. And those are supposed to be very helpful for women who are at that stage, pregnant, or those who are already breastfeeding. And we will be having a couple live shows where we'll be doing giveaways. One will be this week and one will be next week. We have 2 clinics pending for certification. So that's one in Toledo, San Antonio Polyclinic, and we also have San Narciso in Corozal pending certification for being baby friendly. And we also have, like I said, we're going to be working on an ad that we will be sharing as soon as we finish developing it. And we also do have our various support systems and trainings that will be taking place to support women who may be having challenges with breastfeeding.
Nice. Well, ladies, I think, it is very clear when you're talking about how you want to get your child started on the best foot possible, how important it is to exclusively breastfeed. We hope that expecting mothers and even new moms are convinced to do so, or those who've already decided that they'll stay on that path. Thank you for sharing your story, Leanne. And thank you, Robin.
Can I say one thing before I leave?
Sure.
I don't want to leave without thanking my current boss. He has been very, very supportive, Mr. Jamor Lopez. I have never had to express milk in the bathroom that was somewhere else that I used to work. And the support does make a difference. So I just wanted to say thank you, and as well as the other employees at work who've been also very supportive in giving me my space and the time that I needed to pump milk. So,
all right.
And thanks for having
Wonderful.
me.
Yeah.
Share my story.
I think you've been officially recruited as part of their education team,
Yes.
just so you know. Thank you too, Denise, for reminding us. And we definitely look forward to hearing the results of that CAP study to find out what people really are thinking about breastfeeding.
Thank you. Maybe we could get that done for next years.
Yeah, I would look forward to that. But with that, though, we're going to go ahead and take our final break. And when we come back, we'll have our wrap-up. So stay tuned.
Update was brought to you by Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service.
"2020 taught us the importance of being connected to the virtual world, and NextGen is here to keep its commitment to you. Even if you're physically apart, NextGen keeps you digitally connected.
Okay everyone, thank you for following me today.
NextGen provides more than just an internet plan. They provide service plans that support all your online needs. Sign up today and get your NextGen's ultra high-speed internet service. NextGen, powered by Central TV and Internet.
Good morning, sweetie. It's time for school.
Are you a teacher or public sector employee who is thinking of owning your new home? Get the keys to your new home with Belize Bank's all-inclusive mortgage, the best financing option in Belize for your new home purchase or construction. Inclusive of all mortgage-related fees, no down payment, affordable terms, amazingly low interest rates. Visit our nearest branch to speak to one of our financial advisors to discuss how you can be one step closer to owning your new home. Some conditions apply.
Es un hecho. Únicamente con Smart obtienes todo realmente ilimitado. Solo con Smart obtienes datos ilimitados en cualquier momento. Mientras que con el otro proveedor solo son datos dobles los fines de semana. Con datos ilimitados todos los días no hay necesidad de esperar, así que es un hecho que nuestros planes ilimitados superan a la competencia. Por lo tanto, no permita que le digan cómo y cuándo usar sus datos y obtenga llamadas, mensajes de texto y datos ilimitados. Vive la verdadera experiencia de planes ilimitados con Smart. Es un hecho. Haga el cambio y viva Smart.
Whether you're at home, on the road, at work, or at school, if you see news happening or suspect that something might be up, call or text the Channel 5 News Belize tip line at 672-5555. You don't have to give us your name, just give us the tip. That's 672-5555. Call or text us so we can check it out.
And we're back. And three really different but interesting conversations taking place.
Yeah. I think the first conversation where we were discussing with the tourism stakeholders, the operators who are back to work and are dealing with the cruise and overnight sectors, I think the information that they were sharing in terms of what the current procedures are and how they are affected by it, and the fact that there are several concerns that are coming out of what they're experiencing, I think it's something that we need to follow up on with the Ministry of Health and Wellness and the authorities, perhaps the BTB or whoever from that particular department would be able to assist in shedding light as to how they go about that. Because I think they've pointed out one of the ironies of the situation as it stands, and I think it needs to be looked into.
And what's interesting about it, it's not so much about the fact that they don't want to get vaccinated, because they all seem to say, you know, I think Nikolai was very clear, he understands clearly the benefits of vaccination, and he's saying most of his group is vaccinated. It's not so much that they don't want to get vaccinated, it's just that they feel that it's unfair that they're the only ones forced to present it. So that was an interesting take from them this morning. And also hearing of the diversity and the type of tourists who are coming right now. It is really encouraging to hear our tour operators back to work and getting back into the groove of things. It's been a tough year and a half for them, and so we're happy to see them busy and working. We also want to say thank you to the SIB for kind of giving us the highlights of the recent reports that they've put out, and it is of course important that we keep on monitoring what's happening with the GDP, with our inflation prices, and looking at what's happening with our import and export markets. So thank you to them. And then lastly, World Breastfeeding Week started on August 1st and continues for the rest of this week. It was an opportunity for us to talk once again about the importance of breastfeeding. And this year, the theme is Protect Breastfeeding, a Shared Responsibility. And that means the rest of the family and also those who can support the mother, the workplace, the community, and the extended family.
All right.
All right, but that's all the time we have for this morning. If you would like to contact us, send us an email at oye@channel5belize.com. Find us on Facebook at Open Your Eyes BZ and on Instagram at OYEBelize. Remember to tune in tomorrow morning at 6:30 when you open your eyes.
To start your morning right.
Until then, keep your eyes, your mind,
and your hearts open.
We'll see you soon. Enjoy your day, Belize.
Open Your Eyes was brought to you by the Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.